Hey everybody, I'm Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country on MKOCRadio.com. I got to interview Jim Ed Brown just a few months before he passed away, and we had such a delightful conversation, and I learned so much about him, and he was just such a down to earth. It really ended up being more of a conversation for us than an interview. And I was so sorry when he passed away, but I'll tell you what, his music lives on forever. And a lot of people don't get to know the story behind the stars and get to know a little bit about their personal lives. But the lady I have on the phone with me tonight knew him very well. They were married for, I believe, 54 years. And she has written a book called Going Our Way that is not only her story, but she also talks a lot about her husband's story as well. And it's written with my dear friend Roxanne Atwood. And I'm so happy to welcome Becky Brown to My Kind of Country tonight. Becky, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, what a pleasure to have you on the show. And I read your book over the last week, and I have to tell you, it's not only inspiring, it's informative, and it's a page turner, and it's funny, and it's sad, and it's just wonderful to share this amazing journey with you.
Oh, thank you. You know, Roxanne and I, she collaborated with me on the book, and I had started writing a couple of years before she came on board. And so I had done logical, just a lot of history and even a lot of history about my hometown, where I was raised, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So she came on board and kind of brought my book to life, and I think she just did an amazing job.
Well, she's an extremely nice lady, and so is Tim. I just think the world of them. They're very talented
Yes.
people.
And Tim worked with Jim Ed back in his early days. And, we knew he was a talented
Oh yeah,
man even back then.
absolutely, and still is.
Yes.
I just listened to him. He was on the Midnight Jamboree with Margie Singleton last weekend, and we had such a great time listening to that. And what an awesome talent. Tim's going to be on our show later. He's got a new album coming out, so I'm looking forward to talking to him as well. So anyway, Becky, the first thing I want to ask you about as we kind of go through the journey of this book, and the book, folks, is called Going Our Way. And you can get your autographed copy at goingourway.net, and we will have that information on our Facebook page. And I understand the book hasn't officially been released yet. I think it's coming out in stores August 1st. Is that right, Becky?
That's correct.
Great.
Yes, it will be in bookstores then. And if anybody wants to order now, it's like you said, goingourway.net.
Perfect. Well, we will definitely make sure we get that information out, and we'll keep talking about that too. And of course, continue to play Jim Ed's music, and we'll put some little blurbs in there about the book too. So, first thing I want to ask you about this was really amazing. You just had a kind of a by chance meeting of Jim Ed when you were just 12 years old.
I know. It's amazing how our paths crossed many times before we actually met. And I even danced on a program that he and Maxine and Bonnie sang on. And I remember after I got through with my performance, I went to the audience to watch them and listen to them, and I could not believe their harmony. I was saying to myself, I can't tell who's singing what. It's one voice. It's just a blend of one voice. So, I was really impressed with their music, and I was probably maybe 14. So we did cross paths quite a lot, and then I was running in the Miss Pine Bluff pageant, and he was one of those sponsors. And his best friend asked him to, or dared him to ask me for a date. So that kind of started it all.
Well, things moved very quickly for you. You were married very shortly after you started dating, and then real shortly after that, Buster was born, and wasn't any grass growing underneath your feet, was there?
Oh, yeah. I think I was living in a whirlwind. as I look back, and I know for a fact that Jimmy had absolutely robbed the cradle. I wasn't that great at cooking or being a homemaker, but I learned quickly.
I read about that. It sounds like his mama helped you learn a lot of the cooking. So he really liked his mama's cooking, didn't he?
Oh my goodness. Yes, we ate there a lot. Our first year of marriage, yeah, she took care of us.
That's great. I know Jim had loved to eat. We were when we talked. We're the what they call the cherry capital of the world up here in Traverse City, and he knew all about. He's been here, and he says I want to come up there when the cherries are in bloom. And I said, well, come up about the 1st of July, and you'll get them.
Oh, that's one of his favorite things to eat.
Oh yeah, yeah. He knew all about that when I talked to him. He had been here before and played here before, and so he knew all about the cherries up here in Traverse City, no doubt.
Well, Scott, the interesting thing is that our roles kind of reversed as we stayed together so long. He started cooking the night meal, and I would teach dance till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, so he would have dinner ready. And I said, wow, this is just the coolest thing. But he really enjoyed it. And, of course, he went to Viking school, and that's, I guess that made him think that he was a fabulous chef. That's all I've got to say.
Now he cooked for you on your first date, right?
Yes. Yes, he did.
That's a pretty bold move right there.
Oh, yeah. Now, I thought maybe he didn't cook this meal. Maybe it came from the Trio Club, which was right next door to where they lived. So I thought, is somebody bringing that food over? I never questioned. I just enjoyed it.
That's great. That was January the 5th, 1962. You guys got married, and then a lot of things happened in '63. Jim had became an Opry member, and you moved to Brentwood, and you have lived there pretty much the rest of your life, right?
Yes, we've been in Brentwood since 1963.
Wow.
And it was a crossroad. It a very small community. We loved the fact that it was a quick drive to Music Row. It was a quick drive to the airport. It was just a perfect location for us.
Sure.
And we had looked at moving to Hendersonville, but it was really crowded, and the traffic was bad even back in 1963.
It still is.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, it's really bad now. And even in Brentwood has grown by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, that whole area has it. It's I love it down there. I love Hendersonville, but boy, I'll tell you, once you get on 65 there outside of Hendersonville heading north, it's just a bottleneck, you know. It's it's crazy, but beautiful, beautiful area. We love it down there. Of course, Jim Ed's career started back in 1954. He released his first single on Faber Records, which was a Jim Reeves label, that in Abbott Records down in Abbott, Texas. And that first one was just Jim Ed and Maxine, and then Bonnie joined later. And of course, the Browns began their career, and then in the late '60s, I think it was about '65, if I'm not mistaken, Maxine and Bonnie kind of decided to get off the road, and so Jim started his own solo career, and of course, it took off right away with Chet Atkins producing and Papa Top coming out, and a lot of big things happening right at that time, wasn't there?
Oh yes, it was. We were in another whirlwind. Things just took off for Jim Ed, and he even landed his first television show, The Country Place, and it did very well. And then I worked a little makeup on that show. So yeah, we were kind of crossing paths, even though he was in the business and I was doing modeling for Joe Coulter, the Joe Coulter Agency, and makeup. So, yeah, we even crossed paths then.
Wow. Now, you were also on several of Jim Ed's album covers, too, right?
Yes, yes. The morning cover was the first cover that I did, but I was not scheduled to do that shoot. And for some reason, the model was not quite working out, or I don't think they really liked her, and so they called the Joe Coulter agency and said, do you have a model that has a profile, a good profile? And Joe said, well, what is it for? And they said, well, it's for Jim Ed Brown's album. And Joe just died laughing. She said, oh, my gosh, his wife has a beautiful profile. We will send her. And so Joe called me and said, Becky, are you available for an album shoot this afternoon? And I said, well, who is it for? And she said, I went, oh, my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. Little did we know that morning when we were having breakfast that I would be doing that shoot with him.
Wow. Isn't that
but
something?
That album cover did win an award for the people that produced it, the advertising agency. So that kind of led to 3 or 4 more albums. Angel Sunday. Oh gosh, I can't even think of the names, but
I know Evening was one, and then It's That Time of the Night.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. So I had somebody asking me, well, now, do you get residuals, and do you get paid for that? And I said, well, yes, I did. But is your name on the album? Well, no, it's not. That's not how it worked.
Well, your face is on there, so that's even better, right?
I was just the model.
That's great. I love it. Tell me about Dancing with the Cloggers on the Grand Ole Opry. I thought this was a really cool story.
Oh, my goodness. I did not grow up with country music. I grew up in dance. And so I listened to classical, rock, pop, not very much country. So when I moved here in 1963, I got quite an education in country music, and I had never seen cloggers. Even being from Arkansas, I don't think we had any clogging groups then in Arkansas. But Margaret Smathers was backstage, and I just asked her if she would show me the steps that they were doing. And she said, well, yes, I'd love to. So we went back in kind of the back of the Grand Ole Opry. We might have gone to the little girls' room, but anyway, she showed me the steps, and I just picked them up because I am a tap dancer. So she couldn't believe that I could do that. And she said, Becky, we have worked with professional dancers on shows, and they don't get it. They can't do it. And I said, you're kidding me. So she said, would you be interested in subbing and dancing with us? And I immediately said, yes, I would love to. Of course, I don't know if you ever knew Ben Smathers or saw their group dance.
Oh, I certainly did. You bet. You bet.
But, oh, my gosh, Scott, he was amazing. I just couldn't believe the style, and his clogging ability was just really, I would compare him, I really would compare him to Fred Astaire in the clogging world.
Well, that's a long-standing tradition of the Grand Ole Opry. I remember the Melvin Sloan dancers. I saw them perform in person, and just amazing. I know Marcia Campbell of WSM is one of the members of the Cloggers now in the Opry these days, and it's just a great tradition that still carries on.
Oh, I do too. I just love it. And yeah, I love Melvin's group.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to ask you. You live next to some really famous people, and one of the things that I got from your book, and I've noticed this myself too, is that country music people, especially the older generation, they all have a kinship. They all stick together. They all have very strong faith, and they all support each other, and that still stands true to this day. And I know you got to meet and become friends with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's interesting how that worked. We moved to Brentwood, and we rented a house while our house was being built. And our house was built by Dan Mosley, and Charlie Mosley lived across the street. And of course, he was a financial advisor to many of the stars. And so Dan built Eddie Arnold's house. And so our house was built on the same style as Eddie's. It was just a mirror image. And so everybody in our little community, it seemed that they were in the music business. Skeeter Davis, Ralph Emery lived down the street. Little Roy Wiggins lived across the street. The gospel great. Oh, wow, I can't think of his name. Lived down the street. Jeannie Pruitt lived at an angle. Of course, she didn't live there when we first moved there, but later she did. And then, yeah, it was just a community of entertainers.
That's amazing. Very great memories, and of course, so many of these wonderful memories and stories are in the book. And folks, I encourage you to pick this up. It's goingourway.net, and there's so many great stories in here, and we could just talk forever. And there's so many just wonderful, entertaining stories to read about in here. And it's one of those books you're going to want to read it over again at least a couple times, because you're going to miss something, because you'll be going along, all of a sudden you'll tell a story and it'll go on to something else, and then it's just totally amazing to share on this journey with you. And now the title of your book has kind of a special meaning, because I believe that you and Jim Ed hosted a show on TV called Going Our Way.
We did. It was a television show for TNN. It was a lifestyle program, what it's like to travel in an RV, and we had just a great time filming that show. We had a great crew, and I guess that it was probably one of the most interesting times of our marriage, because we worked together and we played together, and it's interesting how God works in your life and how He brings people into your life. And oh my goodness, what a blessing it was for me to be His co-host.
Absolutely.
And so I called the book Going Our Way, and I thought, what a better title.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I love that show, and of course Jim Ed hosted You Can Be a Star for a long time, Nashville on the Road too. That I love that show, because there was always, I love live performances, and Jim Ed had the very best, the biggest stars of the day that would come on the show, and they perform their hits live, and it's such a great to go back and glimpse that even now.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
See some of that footage.
I enjoy watching it.
Absolutely. Of course, you've had a lot of ups and downs in your life, just like any other marriage, and it had to be a test of faith. I know that you are a cancer survivor, and then on the heels of that, Jim Ed was diagnosed with his cancer. And tell me I know it's hard to talk about this subject, but just give me a little bit of insight of your faith and what got you through this whole thing.
I went to the doctor, and I knew something was wrong. I found a lump, and the doctor, after exams and biopsy, the doctor said, "You have cancer." And it did not shock me. I just thought to myself, okay, I'm going to hit this head on and do what I have to do. And, I am trying my best to stay in God's will. And if this is God's will, I'm going to be a brave warrior. And if it takes my life, I will be in God's will. And I'm a really strong believer that when we die, if we're Christians and we know Jesus to be our Lord and Savior, this makes me kind of tear up.
I understand.
I am so blessed. But, yeah, if life, death can't be that bad, especially when He promises us eternal life. It doesn't get more glorious than that.
Amen.
So
Amen.
I knew that I didn't understand why I was going through the cancer battle, but after so many rounds of chemo and so many rounds of radiation, I was still being a brave warrior. And if I had it to do all over again, I would do exactly the same thing. But I didn't understand until Jay was diagnosed with cancer, and I knew that it made me have a lot more empathy and understand what he was going to be going through.
Certainly. Absolutely.
So, yeah, of course, his was lung cancer, and it was the small cell lung cancer, but he fought it. He really did. He was a brave warrior.
Well, Becky, I was able to interview Bill Anderson shortly after Jim had passed away, and he recounted to me the story that you told in your book as well about Jim getting his induction into the Hall of Fame there at the hospital. And Bill was just was teared up as he was telling me, but I thought that was a testament not only of the faith that all these people had, but also the kinship and the friendship that never went away. And I know that was just a sad but wonderful thing that you were all able to do that for Jim before he passed away.
Yes, absolutely. Jim Ed's family had issues with heart. His dad died at 62, and his mother died at 58, and they had serious heart conditions, and all of his uncles. But Jim Ed really tried his best to take care of himself and not fall into bad eating habits. But of course, he did love to eat. But yeah, it's amazing that he. Well, Scott, I was just rambling on.
That's okay.
I was just rambling on.
That's okay. And it was a blessing too that he was able to do what he loved to do just about to the end. And
yes, he loved life.
And he had
up to the end.
his album In Style Again. We talked about that at length when we talked, and that was a career album for him. That was every song on that album was just beautiful, and the arrangement was great, and he took so much pride in that album. And it was so nice to see him return to the Opry stage and be able to perform again and perform one of the songs from that album. And I know that that was a what I call musical therapy.
Yes, absolutely.
And tell me about the butterflies. I thought this was such a neat thing.
Well, we had talked about death one morning, and I asked him. I said, "Is it good to know that your time is near, or is it better not to know and just go quickly?" And he said, "No, I'm glad I know because I want to see my friends and tell them, how much I love them." And so I said, "Well, we can talk about this all day long, but really, we don't know who's going to die first. I could be the one." But I said, if you go before me, would you send butterflies to me to let me know you're okay? And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I will try." And so,
and it sounds like he did.
oh my goodness, he sent butterflies. I'm telling you. Yeah, it was amazing. The most amazing butterfly was the one that landed on my tennis ball on the tennis court. But first, it was just flitting and flittering around me. And I thought, good grief, what is going on? This butterfly is trying to attack me. And so it kind of went away, and in a minute, the ball dropped at the net, and I reached down to pick it up, and there was the butterfly.
No doubt about it right there.
I mean, absolutely.
Well, I am jumping around here a little bit, but if you've got just a couple more minutes, I wanted to ask you just a couple more things. I know you're pressed for time. You were the makeup artist for among other things on the Johnny Cash show.
Yes.
And I got to ask, did you do Johnny Cash's hair?
I never did Johnny's makeup or his hair. Why, Scott? Did you have a problem with his hair?
No, I just loved his hair, and I just wondered. I was wondering if you could tell me how he got it like that. Him and Conway Twitty had the best hair in country music, as far as I was concerned.
Oh my goodness, isn't that the truth? Oh yeah. Well, we went through a phase in country music, and even if you're a country music wife, you still had big hair. And we look back on those pictures and we go, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? But yeah, I loved doing that show, and I did quite a few celebrities that I really enjoyed being around. And but let me tell you, it takes like 45 minutes to do a face. So when we started doing makeup, there would be probably four makeup artists. And we would start in the early afternoon, like at 1 o'clock, and they would be having rehearsal or doing things, and then the people would come get their makeup when they were through rehearsing or whatever. And so it was really hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded so wonderful and glamorous, but no, it was hard work to do a face and in 45 minutes. So if you did 4 or 5 people, you were kind of exhausted.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the things I love about your book, and for folks that think that people just in the entertainment business just magically show up and do their songs. There's a lot to it behind the scenes,
Oh yeah.
and you talk about that a lot in this book, and I think that's a great glimpse in what it's really like. You have regular lives just like everybody else. You have ups and downs, you have trials and tribulations, and
Yes.
you have friends that get you through it, and it's just like the rest of us, and it kind of all it brings us all together, which is what I love about country music too.
No, me too.
And of course, you've got a lot of great appearances and dates coming up, including the CMA Music Festival, Larry's Country Diner, and the Country for a Cause, which we are very happy to promote, along with Bobby Marquez, and the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum. So make sure you get out and see Becky and get a chance to meet her. And please get this book at goingourway.net. And Becky, I'm going to play a bunch of Jim Ed's music, and one of the things I'm going to play, I was very privileged to get permission from WSM to broadcast Jim Ed's performance, one of his last ones on the Opry, and he did Papa Top, and we're going to play that for the folks, and some cuts off of his last album and some of the stuff
Oh,
with the
great.
Browns too. But I want to end this on a high note, and I've got to ask you because this was such a funny story. This is back when you were still dating Jim Ed. Tell me about the double booking.
Well, I told Jim Ed when we first started dating that I did not want a serious relationship, that I was dating other people, and so I had a date. It must have been a Friday night, maybe, and my girlfriend and I were performing at a church luncheon, and Jim Ed called and said he was going to come and watch us if that was okay. And I said, sure. And so he came, and we went back to my house after we performed, and it was like 1 o'clock, and then it turned into 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and Jim Ed was still there. And, I didn't want to say, Jim Ed, I have a date tonight. Um, and so he just kept hanging around, and so my date came to pick me up. And so Jim Ed always teased me about the night I double booked, and that did not happen. It's just that I was with Jay for a luncheon, and I had a date with somebody else that night.
I thought that was such a funny story. I
So,
loved
that was kind of a turning point for me. I kind of stopped dating other people. That kind of did me in.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Well, Becky, I can't tell you what an honor this has been to talk with you, and I absolutely love the book, and I hope folks will take a moment and visit goingourway.net and pre-order this book. And once the book is out, please pick it up. It'll be available, of course, at Ernest Tubb record stores and book outlets and everywhere you can get your media. And it's such an entertaining book, and with all the thanks to Roxanne Atwood. I keep saying Roxanne today. I don't know why I do that. Roxanne, you're going to kill me. I know I got your name wrong twice.
Yes.
She'll kill me for that, but I'm sorry. And
Oh, well, thank you, Scott. I
yes, and thanks to
really enjoyed talking with you.
I did too, and thanks to Martha for setting this up. And we're going to play a bunch of Jim Ed's music for you right now. This is Becky Brown, Going Our Way. And thank you so very much, Becky, for being on My Kind of Country.
Oh, thank you.